Well, coming up from college in Durango and coming to Leadville, I went to Denver to interview for jobs, and there weren't any good jobs down there, and I really didn't want to live in the city anyway. So came up here, interviewed at Gilman, which was the zinc company at that time, New Jersey Zinc, and came back, and they hired me, and I was going to go to work there, but I came back here, talked to somebody in Leadville, and they said, you got to go to Climax. It pays more money and has better benefits. So I turned around, went to Gilman, turned around, went up to Climax, hired on, and they only hired you as a laborer to start out with, no matter what your past was, even if you were an experienced miner. And so I hired on as a laborer, went through their orientation, went underground, spent my 2 weeks on the cleanup crew, which everybody did, whether you were a School of Mines graduate or a doctorate or whatever. You started on the Stork level at Climax, running a square point shovel, cleaning the ditch, the piss ditch. I got assigned after my 2 weeks. I got assigned to the 600 level because I'd put down I wanted to be a development miner. Development miner being the people that actually drill, blast, and muck, as opposed to the muck crew that hauls the ore, or repair crew, or mechanics crew, or any of those. So I went to the 600 level and started on driving a heading named 6370, which was ore passes coming down to a drift from the Stork level, because they were building a big crusher on the 600 level. So I worked down there, and actually I was kind of at the end of the actual mechanical and physical mining, running Gardner Denver jacklegs, long-shelled liners, laying track, timbering the drifts down there. We used timber instead of concrete at that time for most of it. I worked on that timber crew and that crew for quite a while, and then they were cutting back on people, so I ended up because I didn't have a lot of seniority, I got pushed back to the concrete crew and did forms and concrete, which wasn't near as much fun as mining. I mean, that's the same thing you could do in construction anywhere, except it was in the dark. The same time I was on search and rescue here in Leadville, and did a bunch of that, interviewed for mine rescue underground, and they decided that because of my background, I maybe could get into this program. We created a first aid program called REACT. And I don't know if you've run into that, but Responsible Emergency Action, Care, and Transportation. And this was after a string of accidents and everything at Climax, and we decided to do an 8-hour training session for every employee at Climax, from the general manager down to the new hire, mixed together in the class, because injuries and accidents can happen to anybody. And I taught that course, was one of the instructors and one of the developers of that course. And we taught that for 4 months until we got 3,000 people trained. Because of that experience and teaching that kind of thing, I got promoted into management as a safety inspector. Looking back on my 30, 40 years in mining, I was lucky in a way to have hired on 1970 in a time when there was a huge transition. I mentioned that we timbered, we did rail. That was before diesel equipment was really going. Diesel equipment was a huge change when the underground mobile equipment started in development, and it was all done with that instead of rail and track equipment. You still had confined space, it was still dangerous, but that was the biggest change. The other one, as we talked about, was blasting, when we got away from dynamite, because I used to come home every night after swing shift at midnight, and I'd have a dynamite headache, and I used to sniff Clorox that used to help clear that. But that changed. We got away from dynamite. We went to ANFO, which you wash down when you got done. It didn't get more sensitive as it got old. And then later on, when I left Climax and the other places, nobody used jacklegs anymore. We used jacklegs for roof bolting, for supporting. And I mean, a Gardner Denver weighed 140 pounds. And you had to pack those down the tunnel, down the drift, and get up and drill with them. Well, that's all gone. It's all electric hydraulic now. It's still physical in a way, but not like it was when I started. You weren't packing timber. You weren't climbing up and down raises. You weren't carrying jacklegs. I don't think you could go to a mine today, like over at Henderson Mine, and find a jackleg drill. As an underground miner and even as a manager, I worked every kind of shift you can think of. 7-day production, which is rotating 3 shifts. My favorite was days and swing shift, where I worked two weeks of days, 5-day schedule, and then I worked 2 weeks of swing, 5-day schedule. So I could go out hunting and fishing or climbing a mountain on swing shift and go to work. And my least favorite was a 7-day production because your body never quite got used to it. But I like days and swing better than straight days. Yeah, my first time underground that I remember was, well, other than sneaking in a little few dog holes up on the hillside above Silverton when I was in college, I took a quick tour of the Standard Metals mine up there above Silverton, which is closed now, and I think they're rehabbing it. But I liked underground. I liked the dark. I don't know what it was. I liked the geology because I'd taken a lot of geology, and I liked looking at the rocks and figuring out what was there. And it just always appealed to me. And when I came up here and couldn't get an office job in Denver, I mean, I had no regrets about going to work underground. I was glad they were hiring, and it was a fascinating career.